tēnā koutou e te whānau, nā mihi nunui ki a koutou mō tautoko te kaupapa o tēnei rā. Ko mauna pōhatu te maunga, ko ohene mataroa te awa, ko tūhoi te iwi, ko Tina Barnett tahau. First, I would like to, kei te mihi kia kōrua John Minto, thank you for inviting me here today. It's a real great honour and privilege. And also to our Pacifica over here, Nana Efeso Collins, meeting you for the first time today. I acknowledge the both of you because I too have grown up in Otara. I grew up in Otara at the late 60s, early 70s, when forestry was being privatised, and my dad, who was a forestry worker, had to move to urban living back there. So Otara was the first place I grew up when we moved from our little area in the Bay of Plenty. And so I'd like to acknowledge our Otara whanaunga and our Pacifica. I was around when the Pacifica were migrating into New Zealand at that time, and there were very distressing times with a lot of things that went on back then, but I'd like to acknowledge that. So, yep, kia ora. And why I acknowledge you also, Efeso, is your description of Talanoa, because as a Māori, and to the point, I'd just like to say that the wairua of cultures is the connection that unites the emotions to progressive outcomes, and for all people to benefit. And that's the message I was understanding in your Talanoa description there. So I'd like to mihi to you again. So success to achieve is, in my view, is to having passion, and the passion is the love for people and a heart to help. And so in saying that, that is why I now speak as an employee of Sky City, and the Sky City Association that was mentioned is the on-site union that I was co-president of. So I was middle-aged at the time, that 17 years ago, when I was employed as a Sky City dealer croupier. I was a beneficiary with 5 dependents, age ranging from 15 months through to 15 years. So it was a real challenge to come off a benefit and want to work really hard. And my main objective was to get a home for my children. And so that's what I was out to do, work very hard and achieve that. What I found and discovered in that time was that the sacrifice of quality of time raising them is non-recoverable. And during that time, I became a transient family, moving frequently from home to home for more affordable housing. It was adapting to a lifestyle that one becomes accustomed to according to their income earned is what I was surviving on. A work-life imbalance was caused through the high demands and needs of employers wanting employee flexibility with staggering start times and varying hours of work. And so after 17 years of employment and during COVID, and because of COVID, I am one of those victims of redundancy. So I was made redundant. And so now during that time, you know, when the news comes, you are worried because you're not sure where you're going to go to or what you're going to do next. Already 17 years, middle-aged, that's another 17 years added to me. So as a 57-year-old, you know, you do struggle to understand where you're going to go to from here, what you're going to go to next. I was fortunate enough to purchase a home during that time of employment. Unfortunately, and ideally, I would like to have had one in Auckland because I have children being raised in there. And the reality is, urban living is where employment, well, I believed is, and that's where the money is to be made. My boys are adolescents. I've had challenges with them because of being a transient family, and the instability of their life has caused involvement with the justice system. And but as they've gotten older, and they're now fortunate enough to have been employed into construction, but during that time, and being a union member in Sky City, you do understand the rights of employees. What was very hard for me was getting the children to understand their employee rights when they went into the workforce, because when you have this knowledge, you understand what their entitlements are. And when you try to educate them on that, they don't understand. They think you're just a mum who's union, and you're just going to say this anyway. So you know, I found that really hard for them to accept that they do have rights. And they weren't going to listen to their mother, and so I couldn't do anything about that. So I go back to Laura, who spoke earlier about our young people voting. My son is now 20, I have 21, 19 and 18-year-old. My 21-year-old now calls Jacinda Ardern Fire Cinder. You know, I was really surprised, but yet happy to hear him refer to actually speak of any politician. At 18, I told him you have to vote. He didn't want to vote. He doesn't know anything about politics. But to come out and say Fire Cinder obviously tells me that there's some impact of whatever she's doing for our youth. And so now I feel confident because of Fire Cinder and whatever she's putting out there and whatever she's done to capture his heart. I mean, well, he's a teenager, but never mind. Whatever he's done to capture his heart, he's actually listening there. So I go back to what I say about trying to get them to understand their employee rights when they go into employment, and they resisted hearing what I had to say. Then maybe one of the solutions there is having this in our education system. They need to know this before they go into employment, and that's not happening. And I think that that is very important. Just touching on, you know, simple things like your break times. They've gone into construction, they're doing 12-hour days. He comes home and he says, "Oh, Mum, I didn't get a break till..." You didn't get a break till when? You know, and, "Oh, it's okay, because the boss said once we push this work out, you know, we'll get a break." And so this is really important. Their wages, they don't know that there's a minimum wage and then, you know, wages go up. They just believe whatever they're getting, and they're just happy to get that money, is what they are worth. They need to know they are worth more than what they are being told, what they are being given. So in saying that, Laura, I think that's one thing that we may be able to do for our youth is getting them educated in their employee rights even before they start working. Another thing too is when I was made redundant, you know, the compensation that was given, and it's called a redundancy compensation, and that should be what it says it is, compensation, because capped at 30K for those who exceed this has no eligibility to relief subsidy, which disappointingly, after being taxed, has almost half of that money gone anyway. So, you know, to tax a compensation after so many years of quality of time sacrificed, I think that's a little, you know, that's not too much to ask for. Now that I'm in the position of looking for employment, I have been seeking employment and have discovered that a majority of it is part-time. So to end up back on a benefit and then be able to seek part-time work, I also think that that should have no secondary tax, and that a part-timer should be able to earn at least $500 a week. I have a mortgage to pay. At least $500 a week before it's taxed at any cost. And so, and then the 55 plus, I mean, I'm sure they would like to work, I'm sure they would, but let's be realistic here. You send in your CV, your age is there, You might have a European name like Tina Barnett, you know, but when your age is there, and then you might be successful, and then you might be shortlisted for an interview, and you walk in, and you're Tina Barnett, but you present as a Māori. And sometimes that changes the whole dynamics of things as well. So as for 55 plus, maybe there's the option to accessing early retirement because how long has it been? It's gone into a little while now, and I still haven't got employment. And it's not that I haven't been trying, but I still am not successful. The options are there, but you've got to apply for these and be able to get them first. So the challenges of racism is real. I have to be honest, I did not like to admit that to myself, but it is real. I don't admit it to myself because if I'm successful in something, then that just all goes by the wayside because I think, no, I made it and it had nothing to do with me being a Māori. But in all reality, when you reflect back, sometimes the opportunities that you missed out on were much greater than where you are right now. And being a Māori did have a lot of disadvantages to why that wasn't achieved previously. So, guys, I know we have a 10-minute window, but basically, in a summary, I have been a working single mum for 17 years, just been made redundant. I'm confronted with the issues of future employment, hopefully. Teenagers who don't understand what they're walking into employment, but they're just happy to work. They left school because they were feeling sorry for their mum, growing up barely living from week to week and wanted to support her by going to work early. Education is really important for all children, but they chose to leave school early. They were successful in construction. I'm grateful for that, but there's still a lot of learning to go on there. And so I believe that that's where the future for our youth is having them educated in their employee rights before they go into employment, and maybe becoming an employee advocate might be a job I could consider. Kia ora, everybody.
Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Tēnā koe.